I have to burp. It's a great way to start a video. I've already shut it off a few times, so I'm not going to do it this time. And I think I kept it in. Okay, so many of you are probably going to wonder why I am going to feel so strongly about this topic, considering I am not a debt creator. And the reason is, I started thinking about it a couple weeks ago when, inevitably I see Bone Stone Earth Flesh being sold or somebody has it and posts pictures. And I mean, who doesn't want that deck? There are probably a few of you, but all in all, who doesn't want that deck? And of course, I'm one of the one that lust after it. It's gorgeous. I love Anna Turian. I hope I'm saying that right. I love her artwork. And I really need to get one of her decks. I don't have one yet, but I'll make it. So I started thinking about oh, poor me, and I can't afford it, and it's going for so much, and why don't they maybe just sell the artwork so that I can print my own? Why don't they do a second run? Blah, 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 blah. All this me, right? So then, I started thinking about what other options are there so that the deck is more available, that more people can have it. So I decided, well, I'll make a video on it. And then I said, well, wait, I don't know much about deck creation and why things are done the way they are. So maybe before I open my mouth, I should ask. I should look around. I should discover why things are the way they are. And that's exactly what I did. I talked to a handful of deck creators. And they were all so very lovely and giving me, their honest experience with creating a deck and what it entails and why some of the decisions are made that are made. And let me tell you, I did a 180. It changed my mind completely on how I looked at deck creation and the selling and the out of print and the limited runs and all this. So we're just gonna dive in because now I feel like I need to talk about this because I was so adamant that it could change, that things could be different, that creators might not have been doing all they could to get the deck out, for us. Selfish. I often do that. And I had to step back, and now that I have, I've realized that to make amends to myself, I am going to let you, good people that might be having the same reservations as I did, what the realities are. And don't take me at my exact word because, again, I am not a deck creator. I can't say for sure. But this is what I came up with after talking to a few of them. The first thing we'll talk about, because I think it is probably the biggest and the most, I hear about this the most, is the price of indie decks. And I see it all the time, people bitching about the cost. And maybe at one point I was one of those people. And still today, when I tell somebody, I spent $50 on that deck, you did what? They can't believe it. And yeah, there was a time before I got into tarot decks that I wouldn't have believed it either. So why are the decks costing, an indie deck can go anywhere really from, let's say, $35, very low, to sometimes as much as $80, $90. Median price is usually between $50, $55 for a decent indie deck, which seems a little bit pricey for a deck of 78 cards, but is it? So, okay, one, and I'm going to tell you why, that is not that much money for the amount of work that has gone into creating that deck. So here are the reasons. Oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, and probably more often than not, the creator has spent years of hard work, of a lot of energy, a lot of heart, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, I am sure, to put their art onto paper, to take 78 cards. We take that for granted. Because when I sit down, I think I want to make an oracle for myself, and I've thought about it and still am thinking about it. I think, what would it take? Well, I draw a picture, easy enough, and then I have to create 77 more if I'm going to create a tarot deck. That's not so easy. That is a lot of work, a lot of work. And some of the talent that goes into these decks is phenomenal. I can't come anywhere. I don't know art. I'm not a very artsy person. I can be creative and I'm craftsy, but I am not artsy. So I can't even imagine the process of going through actually putting it on paper. I do have notes. That's something, right? I actually made notes for this. So then after it's on there, then they look at it as a whole. And often I'm sure there is a lot of editing to be done. A lot of changing. A lot of, like that doesn't look right, doesn't fit with the deck. Let's go back, redraw it again and again and again. So there's getting all that right. Then there's getting it from paper onto the computer. And that is something too that is beyond me. Any kind of digital editing, I know nothing about. So imagine having to take that artwork, each one getting their own file, each one getting shaved to fit the mold of whatever, that the deck is going to be. All done perfectly so that they all match up and they all look in sync. That's another huge endeavor. And not only is it that, a creator has to know about digitizing artwork. And from what I've read, and it's very little, there is so much that we don't understand that goes into that. I mean, the coloring, the resizing, there's just so much. And so they have to educate themselves or pay somebody else to do it, which is money coming out of their pocket. So that's just, another huge step after the artwork has already been created. And it's worth mentioning that that artwork costs money. Whatever they are using to create that, there is money cost. There's a cost for the supplies, for the time. Most creators, if not all, but at least most of creators, don't create a deck as a full-time job. They already have a job. They have a family. They have obligations. We all know, and if you don't, I'm telling you, there is no big money to be made in deck creating. You're not going to become a millionaire. You're not even going to become, you're not even going to become well off. You're not going to make enough to pay the bills as a deck creator, not as an indie deck creator. The profit is just not there. So we have to assume and not take for granted that deck creators have other jobs that are paying the bills. They have families that they are taking care of or that they are a part of. They have a million other obligations and they are creating a deck as a work of the heart. They're doing it because it is something they genuinely want to do and they feel passionate about. They're not doing it for money. And if they are, you're probably going to see a really shitty deck. Let's be honest. Okay, so, we're paying for their time as well as their art supplies. Okay, so then they have that all done, okay? They have all of this done. Now they have to find the right printer and the right publisher, which requires what? It requires a lot of networking. It requires finding the right printer and publisher. It requires getting a hold of them and having them print out samples, which costs money. Waiting for those samples to be sent so that you can determine which cardstock and which one looks right for you. The stress of wondering, is this going to be right for everybody? What is best going to suit this deck for myself? And then what is going to suit it for, the consumers? What are they going to like? What are they going to appreciate when it comes to the quality of this deck? And we are spoiled. We do expect indie decks to have really good cardstock, to be really well packaged. We expect, a lot of us I think even, are expecting extra little goodies because that's what indie creators do because they are doing it from the heart and they do all this automatically. So they're waiting for that. And then, they either, fund it out of their own pocket, which bless their hearts. I mean, that's a gamble. That's a gamble. If you don't know how it's going to sell and you pay for it all out of pocket, you have no idea. A lot of them will start Kickstarters. And while I tend to think that might be an easy, just get in, type a few words, tell them what you're doing, wait for the money to come in. From what I've heard and who I've talked to, the process, that's me being selfish again and not really thinking, because the process is much more difficult and time consuming than that. And then you have a whole base of people that are waiting to hear every little thing that you're doing with the deck. They're waiting for the next news. They're waiting to see the product. Then they're waiting to get the product. All their money is now in your hands. The stress. We're paying for their stress. Where am I on my notes? Okay, okay, okay. So they've got the decks, and let's talk about let's not. Then they have to decide how many decks they can have in their whatever environment they're living in, their house, their apartment. They can't really have thousands of decks. Where are they going to put all of these decks? So they must have the space, and then we are taking up space in their residence, wherever that is, and we're paying for that space. Then they pay for all the packaging supplies, the boxes, the little crunchy things, paper crunchies that go in, the cards that they're going to send out with a little handwritten note, the extra stickers, the ribbon, the tape, and then they're paying for the post. I mean, we probably paid for postage as a part of buying the deck, but then they have to get it posted. They have to send it out in the post. So there's so much work and even more money being spent in this packaging process, both with their time and with the actual material they're using. Okay? Then it's sent out. Then they have to worry about the customer service that comes along with that and making time throughout their week to make sure that they can sit down and deal with any issues. Decks arriving that aren't, 100% adequate. There's always going to be somebody that's not satisfied. I have been one of them. I hate to say it, but I have been one of them. And so you get a hold of the creator and you say, this, and this, and then that creator has to figure out a way to make you happy, whether that's a refund, whether that's sending out a new deck. So you're dealing with any of those inquiries. The inquiries that I'm sure come in about, where is my deck? I paid for this deck, I haven't received it yet. We all know there are those people, and that creators get those kind of messages. And then something I didn't think about that was pointed out to me is the work that will go in even years later into the customer service of that deck. You have people reselling these decks, and while it wouldn't have occurred to me, now it makes sense that people buy these decks second, third, fourth hand, and they are still getting a hold of the creator to say, what about this and what about that? This is missing a certificate of authenticity. Can you get this? Can I get this authenticated? Right? Authenticated? Are people just writing to complain again? This card stock isn't what I thought it was, and, I'm sorry I bought your, all these things, and they're still dealing with a customer service when their product has already been sold to somebody. They're dealing with it from people that have bought it, way down the road. So you know what? There's that. Okay. So, FYI, at the end of the day, from what I have heard, creators make between $5 and $10 per deck. That's all. That's all. We think that, $50, $60, holy shit, they must be making a killing, right? Even if they were making all of that money in profit, it's still not a killing. But they make $5 to $10. I didn't know this until I asked around. Let's be extremely generous and say they are making $10 per deck. They sell 100 decks. That's only $1,000. Now let's be really generous and say they have from Kickstarter, they have gotten 1,000 people. They've sold 1,000 decks. That's only $10,000. Some people might think that's a lot of money. It is not. In today's economy, $10,000 can go like that, especially considering, maybe the time they had to take off work or the time away from family they spent. Even given the $10, selling 1,000 decks, still, it's not worth it. That nobody is going to bleed that much of their soul for $10,000. It's just not going to happen. That makes me very sad. It makes me very sad that creators only make that much after all is said and done. A lot of that goes to the publisher, all the packaging, all the little things we don't think about and that we take for granted. There is money put into. Okay. That's almost that on that topic. I also want to say that like there are always reasons people will think that that is a high price to pay for a deck. It could be that they have never purchased an indie deck, in which case they purchased, $15 to $25 Amazon deck. So they see a $50 deck and they go, holy shit, I can buy a deck on Amazon for, less than half that amount. A lot of people don't realize what goes into making these indie decks, and thus they don't appreciate. They don't know that it is worth that amount of money. Another reason I can see that people might be bitching about it, which I see, not maybe, they do. And I'm not saying anybody in particular, and I don't know that I've ever seen this specifically, but I imagine it seems like a lot of money to people who are buying a lot of decks. People that are collectors, for instance, or people that just like to buy and resell their decks, if they don't like them. For whatever the reason, if $50 seems like a lot, it's probably because you're spending money on a weekly basis on decks. And yes, spending $50 a pop for decks that you're buying all the time is going to get and seem, expensive. Collecting is expensive. I mean, not everything. There might be some things like rocks. If you want to collect rocks, But if you don't want to spend money being a collector, go find something else, because tarot collecting is not going to be cheap. And if a collector is complaining at all about the price of indie decks, shh. Because for others who don't buy a lot of decks, and I'm not saying anything bad about collectors. There is nothing wrong with collecting decks. We've discussed this. We've discussed it. And a lot of collectors don't even bat an eye at the cost of decks. This is what they like to spend their money on. This is what they like to do. Great. They have no problem spending that kind of money. And then others of us that only buy a deck, once every couple months, or they wait for the exact right deck to come along. We aren't going to bat an eye when we do spend $50 to $100 on a deck, because we're not spending, $50, $100 every week on decks. And that's why today I have no problem spending a good handful of money on an indie deck, especially if it's one I am very attracted to, that I think I'm going to resonate with. I don't spend a ton of money on decks. So when I do buy a deck, I don't mind handing over big wads of cash. And I didn't think about this until just now, but the resale value of tarot decks is astronomical. Nearly any tarot deck you buy, you can sell for $5 less than what you bought it for on places on Facebook like Tarot Marketplace, on eBay, even on Etsy. They have a high resale value, assuming you have not messed them up in any way. People will buy the deck for $5 less than what it is on the seller's website, because it's still the same deck of cards. It's not used as other, some consumer products are used that don't have these high resale values. Tarot decks too. So if you're nervous about spending $80 on an indie deck, keep in mind that if you get that deck and you resonate with it and you love it, you are going to not ever regret spending $80 on that deck. That will serve you for years and years and years. You'll never regret it. But if you do, if you get it, I really wish I hadn't done this. This isn't resonating. Perfectly fine. Sell it for $70. You've lost 10, and you got to handle this deck. It's like a fee. When I think of reselling decks for myself, because I'll buy a deck kind of because I know that I can resell it, and if I lose $5 or $10, well, that was the cost of me looking and handling the deck for a week. That was the cost of knowing. That's me renting a movie to see if I like it before I want to buy it. So, the cost is really, to me now, it's just kind of a moot point. I think creators should be charging a little bit more. I just really, I would like to see them make a larger profit than they are. And in order to do that, they would have to charge a bit more. But to make $5 to $10 means that they're charging really as little as they can in order to make any kind of profit at all. Bless their hearts. Raise that price by $10. Make another $10. Make $15 to $20 per deck, because you deserve it. They deserve it. It's so much work. Okay, gushing. I'm trying not to gush. Okay. Now, we've talked about the cost, all the cost. Let's talk about some of their other options and things that I was thinking. Other options. Going mass market. I did it off screen just for you guys. Whoops. There's some left over. So why don't they go mass market? Where there are a ton of decks, where they won't go out of print, where we can get them. I knew that deck creating was probably something very special, but after talking to a few creators, it's become even more obvious to me, more clear just how special it is. These are their children. These are special creations. This is something they have poured their heart and soul into. This is something that they have taken the time and energy to make as perfect as they can. And often that takes a lot of their spirit goes into that deck. We think about consecrating a deck, blessing a deck. That takes energy. It takes spiritual energy for us to do that. When we read for people, that is taxing. It gets exhausting mentally and spiritually after a while. Think about creating a deck, thinking about painting, drawing, coloring, whatever art form. Think about that and how draining that is. How much of that spirit just leaves you and goes into that deck. And then we want to say, give it to mass market. Here's what I didn't know. When they do that, they give up their rights. They sign a contract. No publisher is going to want your deck if you still have your hands on the reins. If you have full control of that deck, they're not going to mess with you. They don't want that. Publishers that buy decks want to know that that deck is theirs. They make the changes. They decide when it goes out. They decide when to make it out of print, and so on and so forth. So the minute a creator signs over to a publisher, they can no longer sell that deck themselves. They can no longer make any changes to the artwork in that deck. They cannot change the cardstock of that deck. They can't change the borders. They can't change anything about that deck. Their babies, their life and soul that went into this deck is now in the hands of somebody else entirely. Do we want to ask creators to do that? And then beyond that, when it goes to mass market, we take out the magic of working with the creator. We take out the magic of getting an item that we know has been hand-picked, hand-wrapped, the card and everything. The magic that comes from receiving an indie deck is extraordinary. We give that up to save a little bit of money. And then we put corporations into the picture. And I know a lot of us, probably not all of us, but a lot of us, do we like corporations? I don't like corporations. I deal with them because it's today's world and we have to, right? But if I have the option to buy from a local store, a small business owner, I equate that to indie creators. I am going to go into a local store and buy something that may cost $1 or $2 extra that I could get somewhere else because I know I'm supporting locally. This is what you're doing when you're supporting indie creators, when you're supporting indie creators. That's what you're doing. And I don't want to give that up. I don't want to be giving my money to Amazon and to, Los Scarabeo and Llewellyn. If I don't have to, why would I? They're just fine. They're fine and fancy free. This is what they do. This is what they do. And they're making all the money in the world, Let's try to keep it in the hands of the indie artists and not complain when they don't give it to mass market. They're giving up so much, and so are we at the same time, asking them or expecting them to do that. I feel like I had one more point that just left me when it came to going mass market. The limited runs. I do want to touch on that really quick because I've thought that why even do a limited run of 500 copies? Like, why limit it at 500? Okay, can't you just reprint when you want to? That's just a terrible notion because we've already discussed how taxing the process is for getting them shipped, for packaging, for sending them out. That is a time-consuming process for anybody, let alone people that have families and other jobs and have to support themselves in other ways because they're not making enough money. So when they do this project, they are overexerting themselves. you know, and most of us can handle a few months to maybe even a couple years of overexertion, you know, especially when we're doing something that we love or creating something that we love. But do we want to do that for the rest of our lives? How exhausting. How absolutely exhausting to think of doing that the rest of our lives while maintaining a 9 to 5 job or whatever we're doing, while taking care of our family, while being social. A lot of that we sacrifice, I think, when we are in creation mode. So they have to limit the number of decks. Otherwise, they're just, they're doing this infinitely. So off the bat, they say, you know, I've done it, I've made it. This is the number of decks I feel comfortable handing out. And it is a good selling point. It is a consumer's market. If you say to your consumers, to the tarot fan base here, there's only 500 decks coming out, there's only 200 decks coming out, you know those are going to sell a little bit better. You know, you're not going to be shipping these out into eternity. You're not going to be worried, you know, are they all going to sell? Because people know this is limited. I want to get it now while I want it, you know, while I can. No FOMO for me, you know, let's get it. Do they want to do that? You know, after it's all, you know, after everything is finished and they get to relax, we want to come back and say, please print us another run. Please put your whole life on hold yet again. To do this. That's, you know, I've done it. I've done it with Bone, Stone, and Earth Flesh recently before I did all this. Like, please just print us some more. Like, how hard can it be? It's difficult. You know, shame on me because, you know, it's a lot. Okay, so then we're still into other options. So we've discussed why mass market is probably not the best idea. You know, if we can help it, let's not do mass market. Other options that I thought of are drive-through, make playing cards, places that will print your cards on demand for the consumer. They have your artwork, they'll print them, send them out. Quality is gone. Your quality is gone. I've heard about these sites, and while the card stock may seem great at first, quality good, I've heard that even after a year or two, they start yellowing, they start, you know, fraying, they start all this stuff. It's not good quality card stock. That's the reason the prices are so low. And then on top of that, they are never ending providing customer service. Again, into infinity. Anytime anybody has a problem, it's not going to be Make Playing Cards' fault, publisher's fault. Some of us, no, and we'll do that. But a lot of people will go straight to the creator and say, look, I got your deck and this and this and this and this. And like, you know, like we just said, you know, they want a chance to breathe. So not a good option. You're sacrificing quality. You know, you're giving more of your time. Not going to happen for them. And that's acceptable. Next option is selling artwork. So my thought was, why can't you upload 78 cards as digital files and charge for the artwork? Charge $40, $50 for the artwork. I would pay it, and then I can get it printed however I want to. Selfish again, because piracy is already an issue, right? Huge issue. Like we see a lot of popular decks being reprinted in China, and people actually buying these and then having to catch them out and tell them, look, what are you doing? And then they disappear. You know, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Even indie decks have been, you know, I'm sure copyrighted. And I'm thinking, why don't they just upload their artwork and make it for sale? What do I think is going to happen? I think to myself, well, I'm ethical and I won't ever sell that to anybody. I will never give it away to anybody. I'll never make decks and resell them for profit. But how many would? How many would? A lot. Let's be honest. Like, all it needs to do is get into one wrong person's hands before it's uploaded for everybody to see, anybody to print, cards to buy. So that alone is enough to say no. No, let's not upload the artwork, because that's not even a chance you take. That's a given. It's going to be pirated. And then not only are you losing money, you're going to see this deck printed on terrible cardstock. The artwork is going to look awful because the coloring isn't right. You're going to see all these decks that somewhat look like yours, but like hideous rebirths of your deck. You're going to see them coming from China on cardstock that's falling apart 2 weeks later. You're probably going to start to see artwork that isn't even associated. It's going to be on pages and in pictures and stuff that's not even associated with the tarot. Your artwork is everywhere, and it's not even being associated with you. So, nope. Again, that's their baby. That's their pet. That is everything to them. And why in the world would they take the chance for a few extra dollars that is going to be just destroyed? It'd be humiliating for the tarot, for that deck of cards. Okay. What I will say is that some artists, some creators, do offer this kind of stuff. And I think sometimes we take it for granted. So I was asking around, and I was told to look at Benabel Wen's site. Because I was like, well, do some of these artists do this? Is there a place you can go and buy any decks? And yes, there are, but they're not very, good decks. But when I was checking out Benabel Wen's website, she offers a couple things. And I was very surprised. I never knew this, because it's just not marketed well. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because, it wouldn't work. People aren't interested. Who knows? But I do know that the major arcana of her initial Black and White Spirit Keepers Tarot is available for anybody to print. You can print that out on any cardstock you want. You can get it, you can download it and then send it to your local printer to get really good cardstock. You can create your own majors. And I wrote it. It also comes with the 4 aces and the 4 kings. What is that? 24, 22. That's 30 cards. And that's for free. She also offers, beyond that, I'm going to gush about Benabel Wen because it's Benabel Wen. She offers a lot of even free lessons, free material. And then if you really love her Vitruvian edition of the Spirit Keepers, I missed out. I didn't buy it. I wasn't around, I don't think, when it was printed. I totally missed out. But there is a place on there where you can buy something called the Metafictions Planner. And I might buy it. It looks pretty spectacular, especially if you're like a planner person. It's got, your natal chart, your weeklies, it's got all the holidays, it's got all the moons, the pagan, Wiccan holidays. It's like a huge whole planner that you can print off. And then as an add-on, you can print the full edition of the Vitruvian in a mini deck. So and that's only $5 to add it on to that Metafictions planner. And I think I am gonna do that. And I think I might do a video on printing it and putting it together. So then, free decks. It's a free deck. It might be a mini, but it's the deck for, and not free, it's $5. I'm going to say free. And I've looked around, and there are other people too that do like majors only and stuff on their websites. They don't have the time, or because people, maybe I'm very craftsy where other people probably aren't. So I love the idea of printing off a mini deck and working to make it look perfect. Some people aren't gonna like that. I don't want to do the work, rather buy the whole thing. Can't anymore. There's a 3rd edition coming out. I need to get on there and pre-order before I lose out on that FOMO on that one, right? So yeah. Good on Benabel Wen. Good on her. She's not making anything for that major arcana. Where are we? Okay. I think I've made a clear case why independent decks are worth even more than what we're paying. I truly believe that. And I'd be happy to spend a little bit more on any independent deck that I see. I'm just saying that. The last thing that I want to talk about, this is probably maybe the hottest issue I'll talk about, and so I saved it for last, is selling out-of-print decks. And what do we think about selling those out-of-print decks? One, let's remember that the artist, the creator, sees none of those profits at all. A deck that sold for $60 at the beginning that now is going for $700, that's not, the artist is not making any of that money. So we cannot blame the creator in any way, shape, or form on the deck costing that much. It's not the creator's issue. It's not their fault. You know, we've already discussed the reasons they do limited runs, and they are 100% legit reasons that shouldn't even be questioned. So we can't question a creator when we're seeing decks go for such an amount of money. Now, can we get mad at the person selling that deck? Can we say, and I have said it, it's been me, right here. How unspiritual of you to sell that deck for so much, to make such a killing off that deck. And, you know, I have to step back and I have to say, why am I so upset about it? First thing we have to do, as we have to do with many, many situations in this tarot community online, is take out the word spirituality from anything. It doesn't exist when we're talking about this kind of stuff, and we can't let it. This is an online world. It is a consumer's world. There are many people in the tarot community, both watching, both creators, that aren't super spiritual. I don't claim to be super spiritual. I try my best, but I don't claim to be. And we can't just assume because we see somebody selling a deck that they are this spiritual guru, you know, person. Like, how dare they try to make money when we're supposed to be a spiritual community? Take it out, take it away, take it away. No, not spiritual. So then we just have to look at it being a consumer's market. And why wouldn't they? I have gotten mad, I know, and if you're one of those people, breathe for a minute and think about why you're mad. And if I really strip it back and think about why am I mad, it's because I don't get that deck. Would I be mad if I had $1 million and I could, mine, Bonestone and Earthflesh, $1,000, I'll take it. I wouldn't be mad for a second. I'd be like, guys, look what I did. Look who had the money. Let's be honest. My anger about that situation comes from the fact it's jealousy. 100%. It's 100% I'm not going to get that deck, so I hate that they sold it for that much. I hate that somebody else is going to get it. They didn't even give me a chance. Do I do that about other things? Do I do that about other items in the world that are going for a lot of money? You know, did I do that with Adele concert tickets? I was super sad, but I wasn't hating anybody for buying the ticket. You know, I certainly wasn't hating Adele. Like, I'm just like, well, you know, they have the money and that sucks for me. You know, first class problems. So yeah, when I strip it down, it's absolute jealousy. And there is no reason that if somebody buys a deck that then goes out of print, that then is worth $700, there is no reason for them not to sell at that price point. Good on them. You know, and if we want to start judging and saying, you know, how dare you, we need to think about why. We don't know these people. We don't know. We don't know what the reasons are for them selling that deck for that much. You know, maybe it is pure greed. Maybe they don't even need the money. They're just doing it because they can. In which case, okay, irritating. But again, I don't know. What if they had a run of bad luck? They lost their job. They have this deck from years ago. They say, you know, gotta pay rent this month. And they sell the deck. And then they're seeing people bitch about it being sold for the market price, for what it's going at. And I think I've been one of those people, and I never will be again, after doing some reflecting and realizing why I feel this way. At the end of the day, I have no idea why people are charging what they are charging for decks, and so I have no right to judge them in any way. Anyway, especially when I take spirituality out of it, there's no more anger. There's nothing to bitch about. Okay. The last thing when it comes to selling out of print decks is when it is done by the creator. I am going to speak about this. The creator, months after the deck has been sold out, or a few weeks, or whatever, has some decks as backup in case anything goes wrong, that are left over, that were never used. And so the creator says, I'm going to sell these for $10 more than what they were originally sold for. And everybody online, up in arms. Up in arms. And it's for the same reasons. It's unspiritual. It's unspiritual. Why? Why? What we're really mad about is that it's costing us $10 more. Now that we know better, after listening after I've learned everything I have, now I've passed it along to you. Now that we know, shouldn't we be happy maybe to be spending that extra $10? You know, and again, you know, I'll say the same thing about the creator. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they, after going through this entire process, finally being able to breathe for even a second, say, you know what? I didn't have to use these. I didn't have to send these out as replacements. These didn't, you know, none of them got lost in the mail. I didn't have to send any more out. So they have a box of backups. Most of the time, if not, you know, I'm not saying every time. There are probably some wicked people out there, even when it comes to creators. But most of the time, you know, backups are ordered. You know, in these such cases, you know, they get lost in the mail. They get damaged. And now, so extra decks have to be sent out. Now, what if everything goes very smoothly and they have a whole, you know, box of 50 decks? Why not sell those for $10 more? Especially now that you know that they are really wanted. They are a desired deck. Make yourself some money. You know, yes, these are spiritual. It's hard to even say it's a spiritual tool. It can be a spiritual tool for those who want it to be. But let's stop, because it is the fundamental issue with a lot of bickering that goes on in the tarot community, I feel like. That everything is supposed to be spiritual and on par and ethical. You know, ethical is different, but spiritual. We'll go with spirituality. When, as much as this was done, you know, as a work of the soul, they are still in a consumer's market. And they still have the right to make a profit. And they have a right to sell those decks at whatever they want to. And you do not have to buy it if you don't want to. At the end of all of this, the only thing I can say that I think I want to leave with, and I think I'm done. Wow. Finally, after 42 minutes, whew, it's a long one, is that when it comes right down to it, tarot cards are still just material. They are just an item. They are just a thing that we are not going to take us when we leave this earth. And when it goes out to be sold, it goes onto a consumer's market, because that's how the world is nowadays. It's cutthroat. It's do what you can to sell your product. We don't have to buy those decks. Nobody has to buy an indie deck. You don't have to buy these decks. So next time I catch myself bitching about it, or you catch yourself bitching about it, step back and think, why? One, why? Two, I don't have to buy it. So I have no right to bitch. This isn't government ordered. This isn't something I need to do. You know, nobody's forcing me to pay anything. So why complain about it at all? If you don't like the cost of a deck, move along. There will be others that are more than willing to pay that and more for that particular tarot deck. Bye.